So, on that note, should we head on into the next episode?
Let's do that.
Because
Before
otherwise,
we
it will be
before we
filth.
do, before we do, like when you oh, I don't know. I was gonna say like when you cut bits, like cut that bit into a video of just us talking about Pokemon Go as like a bonus bit.
So
I think
I will
that
make
would
a
be
note. I'll make a note.
yeah. Make a note, just like the Pokemon Dildos bonus video from this episode, and like everyone who's just like, oh, a little Pokemon chat will be like, what the fuck did we miss?
Bonus video, and that was at around about 1 hour 42. Right, here we go. Right, clefable. Right, what is your main memories of clefable?
um, Yeah, so basically the same as Clefairy. I feel like Clefable doesn't have any of its own storylines,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah,
If there are, they weren't that memorable.
yeah,
I feel like it's just there for all the Clefairy storylines, and it really falls into the background. I think it exists to make Clefairy a competitive part of your team as you like level it up and evolve it and need better stats as the rest of your team gets more powerful. Um, uh, so, which is disappointing because, like, it could have like a whole additional bit to it
yeah,
that, like, it's got its own special relationship with like the moon and the stars and all this other stuff. And I'm sure it's gonna say it's got like a really important role as like the fucking spaceship navigator or some shit. When we get to that, but I feel like there's not much to it apart from it's a bigger Clefairy,
yeah.
and Clefairy got all of the important bits. Like I do like the Alpha Clefable in Arceus Legends Arceus is pretty cool. But then like all of the alphas, but like to be fair, it doesn't have like the magnetism and shit. But the Clefairy and the Alpha Clefable does only come out at night on a full moon in Legends Arceus. So it is possible to factor that in future games. And that's pretty cool and tanky. But yeah, that's about it. Apart from that, Clefable is something like I moonstone my Clefairy, I chuck it in a box, I get on with my life.
Yeah. Now,
I don't even really remember it having any standout roles in the anime.
yeah,
There are a couple going around in the background, but nothing that stands out as like um eh.
yeah. So, I agree with that. I when I came to write to doing my picture, I was thinking to myself very similar. Where I was like, so with Clefairy, when I did my like drawing, I was like, okay, there's a couple of routes I could go with this. I could do like you did. I could do it at Mount Moon. Um, I, there was the one from Pokemon Stadium, um, but and the one that I very nearly went with, this is like one of my main memories of Clefable, is that it is the first Pokemon. It's the first Pokemon of the Jungle expansion of the trading card game. So
Okay.
yeah, so it's pretty decent and pretty rare for that reason. And like I said, I very nearly went with that for it's for the image that I drew, and I took a little bit of inspiration from it. But I think for me, the main thing I think of now is the fan theory that Gengar is Clefable's shadow, and the thing. As we've done this, there's a part of me that's like, well, I think that part of that is the limitations of the hardware, but the thing that I think gives it credence is that it is called the Shadow Pokemon, which, and
Yeah.
it is quite different to Ghastly and Haunter, which
Yeah.
which would suggest that it was probably added on last minute, and the fact that it is a shadow Pokemon, and before, as we know, that Pokemon with the typings come in later on in terms of the development,
Mm.
like so the whole like, being like a ghost and all that kind of stuff comes in later. So it actually wouldn't surprise me if at one point in its production, Gengar was intended to be this kind of dark variant of Clefable.
Yeah. So like I don't know how much I believe that fan theory. I think it's a fan theory. But like I do like the parallels between them. I think it's quite cute and fun and it could be something because like they're a very similar shape, but at the same time, we've already acknowledged today lots of Pokemon are very similar shapes, lots of Pokemon are very similar to details, especially in the early generation. I think it is just it was an easy shape to do, an easy sprite to create out of like the limitations they had for creating it on the original Game Boy. So I don't know how much I buy that theory, but I do like it. I think like um they're both creatures of the night, but like one's the moonlight and one's the dark side of the moon could have
Mm,
been a really interesting parallel if they had chosen to lean into that ever. I don't really remember anything from the show or games supporting it, just apart from the fact that they look the same shape. Um, but it is a fun thing to think.
yeah, I tell you this as well. So this is something that when I did my image, uh, when I started to draw the Gengar, I was like, do you know what? I can kind of see how Gengar became so like iconic. You know, like
Yeah.
it was so easy to kind of like make once I kind of got the main shape. I was like, right, so I'm gonna put in the face now, and then I kind of filled in the rest of it, and I was like, right, this just feels like really like I can see how Gengar like caught on in a way that like
Yeah.
clefable never did.
Yeah, because like Gengar like looming out of the shadows is such an iconic mental image. And I feel like, the big grin and the laugh and like when it appears in the haunted mansion in the show is just so memorable. And Clefable just doesn't have that. Like if it had an equivalent of it like appearing in a beam of moonlight, then that could have been really interesting. But again, I think they let Clefairy have all those storylines
Yeah,
and just didn't leave room to build on Clefable too much, if I'm
yeah,
honest. And it's another one that's like very underserved. Like it's basically got the same, yeah, it's basically just Clefairy but bigger. I have like nothing else um like really memorable about it.
yeah.
Like,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I think that is part of like part of the problem that it has is that really it needs to it doesn't really build on what Clefairy does beyond just being bigger, and I think we come to
Yeah.
expect more of a transformation, especially if this is the end of the evolution line. You know, like it it doesn't feel impressive.
Yeah. I get that. It does feel quite underwhelming. Like I was saying earlier, it feels like it's got a little bit of like middle evolution derp, like it's not
Yeah,
fully cooked. Um like I could see Clefable having like a fucking beastly mega if they wanted to give it one. Because they gave Gengar a fucking cool mega evolution.
yeah,
I could see Clefairy having one that like harnesses the power of the moon in a way that I think is actually probably going to get you know uh used by a different fairy type.
yeah. I tell you what else I would accept. I would accept if its final evolution was something. If they kind of went the opposite direction, if they were like, okay, so we've got Clefairy, and now we're gonna evolve it into like almost like a Tinkerbell, like where it goes smaller but is like more powerful.
No, tell you what, I quite like the fairy being a fat Pokemon. And I know that we say that um first generation peak fat Pokemon always here for it. But I feel like a lot of the fairy Pokemon in the newer games are very like slender and delicate and Tinkerbell. They've all got like not all of them. Like Aromatisse is still a nice fat Pokemon. I like Aromatisse just because it is fat. But then like you've got a lot of very like Flabebe is like was the iconic kind of introduction of fairy type uh part of the story Pokemon. Um and I feel like it's cute and I get it, but I feel like that little dainty um style of design is very overdone for fairy type Pokemon. And I feel like I'm quite happy. I would like there to be more like chunky fairies. Like
Mm,
I would like them to do I feel like clefable um is like the fairy godmothers in Sleeping Beauty. Like they're the little fat fairies,
mm,
not the like elegant ones. And I like that. I think that's a species of fairy that's underrepresented.
yeah,
Like little weird bickery fat fairies.
yeah. And I agree with everything you said. However, there is one thing that I would disagree with in that if they had done that with Clefable and gone for kind of the Tinkerbell type thing and been like, okay, so it starts out like this and then it gets like tiny. Um, that would have been the first one before they like overdid it in like, generations 8, 9. Like they had, 6 generations to do something like that before they like went overboard. So I think that if they'd done that in the first generation, we wouldn't be as used to it as we are now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I think you make a fair point
yeah.
there.
And like I say, like I don't have so much of an issue with the body shape. I'd be happy with it to be the same body shape but smaller.
Okay.
Like,
I feel like there aren't any Pokemon that get smaller when they evolve. And I feel like that would be an interesting route to take if they could do it in a way, um, in a creative and interesting way. Like if you could get a Pokemon that leaned into, say, like special attack and agility and speed,
mm,
that I could see justify it getting smaller as it gets bigger. Except a lot of them don't. And I feel like it's really easy to end up like body shamey in a way.
mm.
Like it gets smaller as it gets more powerful.
Yeah, that's
Like I
true.
feel like if there's like a this Pokemon like retreats into uh a different sort of state. Um I don't know. I also feel like it'd be weird for the breeding mechanic for the bigger Pokemon to come out of the smaller Pokemon. I
That
don't
is
know
true.
how they'd factor that in. I feel like there are like as interesting an idea as it is, I think it would take a lot of work to make the concept effective without being like just weird in
Yeah,
a way that could border on unpleasant.
yeah,
Um, and maybe there is someone on that team creative enough to do it and implement it in a way that makes sense and is coherent and not icky. But off the top of my head, sort of everything is like I could see it getting like taller and thinner or like something like that. But I don't love that concept. Um, but I don't know.
yeah.
Don't
And,
know.
and I respect that, but I think that there is room. Like you could like now I'm thinking about it, you could easily do it with like a not necessarily the fairy type, but you say if you did. I know that this is like a cliche, but like say if you did like a car type Pokemon, which I know everyone would be like, oh, I can't believe that
They
this is like,
have
is there? Is there a car one?
River Room. Yeah.
Oh well. If you were to go from like its initial stage being like a jeep, and then it evolves into like a sports car.
Yeah, there's Revavroom, which is a steel poison type Pokemon introduced in Scarlet and Violet that evolves from Varoom. So there are two car-based Pokemon. Um and so Varoom is like a little engine dude that just like chugs around the desert. And Revavroom is like the big car that all of the uh Team Star bosses come out on and fight you with. The one that you can get is like not quite as flashy as theirs, but I mean it's an interesting Pokemon. I think steel poison makes sense because it's like polluting the environment and made of metal.
Mm.
But yeah, there is a car Pokemon now.
Well, cue the outrage again. As I often say,
Yeah.
I'm always learning on this show. Uh, always learning. I mean, I must admit, I did feel like it was ridiculous. I've still not finished Violet, one of the reasons as well was because I kind of didn't like the fact that like Maraid. Now I've said it, I didn't really like the fact that Maraiden was like a motorbike. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just felt weird.
I I also feel like the legendaries are just given to you now. Like you don't have to work for them. Like you're just given Miraidon immediately.
Yeah,
Um and like I miss when the legendaries like were just like they were incidental.
yeah,
Like you had to go out of your way to find the legendary birds. I don't think I've ever caught all three legendary dogs because they like travel and I'm never prepared for them.
yeah,
And then um like in Gold, like Mewtwo is just like in a cave. If you defeat the Elite Four and then don't carry on playing, you might never know he's there.
yeah,
Like Lugia and Ho-Oh, you have to go out of your way to find. They're not part of the story. Like the story is like your rival in Team Rocket, and just you becoming champion and
yeah,
proving that being a good person is what happens. And like I actually did like the way that Groudon and Kyogre were exploited
yeah,
in Generation 3. Um and that made them part of the story, but you still had to work for them. Like they were always going to be in the same place, but like you didn't get them by default.
yeah,
Um and I really do feel like now they make the legendaries like too much a part of the story.
yeah,
And too easy to get. Like if the point of the game is like catch the legendary, like I don't want that. I want the point to be like you are going on your adventure. The legendary is out being a legend and you are just a child. And if you happen to encounter it, it's going to be a mission for you to like get it because it is and yeah, it's a legend, that's the point. But
yeah,
when they just like hand it to you,
yeah,
I've been saying this for a while. Like I don't want to come across all boomer and like, oh, back in my day, yada yada. But like the games when the rivals started picking the Pokemon weak against yours instead of strong against yours, it it started going downhill. It's too easy.
mm,
Like you have to like work to set yourself like Nuzlocke challenge rules, like just to make the game more interesting, and I don't like that.
mm,
Like I want to feel a sense of challenge. And I know I'm an adult, but I think it's not that I'm an adult that it's less challenging. Like my strategy is exactly the same as it ever was, but like I still don't bother putting that much effort into my strategy, is what I mean by that. I still very much play like a child, but yeah, like now, like I'm not scared of my rival anymore. When they
yeah,
started like healing your Pokemon before they fight you, fuck all
yeah,
the way off. Like, make me scared to get to the end of like Victory Road because someone with like six fully healed, powerful Pokemon is gonna come fuck me up. Like, make
yeah,
me earn it. Like, make me feel good about beating you. Don't make me feel like, eh.
yeah. Well, I mean, you saying that, right? So two things came to mind. So I feel like the Kyogre and Groudon was the start of the. I mean, they did it in Gen One because like Team Rocket was connected to like Mewtwo and stuff. But like to
Yeah,
actually have the legendary like full on part of the story, and then you battle him as part of the story. Like I can see why they did that as like a narrative, but that's probably the beginning of them going down this route where every single time you will come across the legendaries, every single time you will like eventually get the legendaries. But
yeah.
I agree. Like the rivals, oh mate, do you know what? Right, I was whilst you were talking, I was because I wanted to mention the name, right. So Eternatus, so cool,
Mm-hmm.
but it is
Yeah.
essentially just given to you, right?
Yeah.
And I looked up the picture first of all because I wanted the name of it. I don't want to be like, oh, what's the name of that one, right? But the picture here has got Hop in it, who is my least favourite rival out of all the rivals. And
Yep,
and
and I know how you hate Hop.
yeah, oh, because they turned me into Gary Oak. They turned me into the one who's absolutely battering him, and it's like, why are you doing this to me every single time? I'd be like, it's so nice that you've got your double, and I'm like swapping out Pokemon because they've like outlived their usefulness. You know that whole you either
Yeah.
die the villain, you either die a hero or live long enough to be the villain. I've now played enough Pokemon that I am Gary Oak. So why are you doing that to me?
Hmm. Yeah, I get that. That is actually like yeah, I didn't really like share your dislike of Hop to that extent until you put it in those terms, and now I definitely get it.
What can I say? I am very influential. Please vote for me in the May 2nd elections. Uh, right, shall we have a look at Clefable's Pokedex entries?
Let's do that.
There we go. Let's go. There we go.
Um,
There's. I just left Eternatus up, so we'll. Right, there's Clefable. Okie doke. Do you know what? Right, as I was scrolling down, then like that may well have just been Clefairy because it's so
yeah,
similar.
it
Like,
is so similar.
I don't know what the reasoning behind it was. Like I tell you what, as well. Now I'm looking at it, it genuinely wouldn't surprise me if Clefable got designed first, and then they were like, "Well, we'll just make a little version of it."
Yeah, quite possibly.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Um,
So here we go. Pokedex entries. Oh, from Pokedex. Pokedex entries. Right. A timid fairy Pokemon that is rarely seen. It will run and hide the moment it senses people. I like that because it's giving it like a bit of a personality.
yeah, 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 I'm with you on that one. Um,
Yeah, and I would.
I like yellow as well. They appear to be very protective of their own world. It is a kind of fairy rarely seen by people. I feel like with that being one of its earliest Pokedex entries, when they introduced fairy type, they absolutely had to make Clefable and Clefairy fairy types.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Even with just the name, like they must have been like, right, well, we painted ourselves in a corner here.
Yeah. I like Stadium as well. Its ears are very sensitive, so it does not like loud noises or busy places, will not come out in front of people. So we already know that Clefairy and Clefable are quite mysterious and secretive, and I like that this gives it some context. And I feel like it could also make sense because like if it's from space where like sound doesn't travel through a vacuum, it makes sense that its ears are really sensitive if they're going to communicate at all out on the moon.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like while obviously that requires some knowledge of how sound travels in space, it's not uncommon knowledge that sound doesn't travel very well or at all in space, or at least doesn't behave the same way it does here.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like that's quite a subtle way of linking it to what else we know about this line, and I really like that.
Yeah. I'll tell you what else it makes me think of. Right. So we've established that it's got a similar kind of shape to Pikachu, and we did the Nidoran line, and that mentioned loads of stuff about ears. And this is
Hmm.
mentioning loads of stuff. Well, this mentions some stuff about ears. It makes
I
me go,
really feel like big ears were just a really easy thing to get into the sprite designs.
well, very, very possibly, but I don't remember there being much stuff about Pikachu's ears.
Yeah, they focus more on its like little cheek pouches, didn't it? Little electric
Yeah.
cheeks.
So why
Um,
does it need those ears?
don't know.
Huh?
I guess to make it more interesting than a little yellow blob.
Yeah. Well,
Because like we've seen many a Pikachu clone happen later. Like Togedemaru doesn't have the same big ears, and I think it looks quite sort of featurelessly round despite its like patterns.
yeah, but what I bet is they couldn't give it round ears because it'd be too similar to Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, that's quite possible as well.
Yeah.
Um, so gold and silver have lent into the ears. Gold has, with its acute hearing, it can pick up sounds from far away. It usually hides in quiet places. Silver is very similar, but with a few minor word changes. Its very sensitive ears let it distinguish distant sounds. As a result, it prefers quiet places. Crystal, like along the same lines, said to live in quiet remote mountains. This type of fairy has a strong aversion to being seen. And Stadium 2 has once again copied Gold's homework.
Yeah.
Um, I tell you what, I really like Ruby and Sapphire. It says clefable moves by skipping lightly as if it were flying using its wings. Its bouncy step lets it walk, even walk on water. It is known to take strolls on lakes on quiet moonlit nights. Now, I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like that has ticked a lot of my boxes. It's showing me what clefable is like in the wild. It's showing me like something I don't know yet. Like I think the bouncy steps are really reminiscent of like astronauts on the moon,
Yeah.
in low gravity, and I love the idea of like being so the clefable and clefairy, the alpha clefable in Pokemon Legends Arceus that I was talking about is by the water. It doesn't walk on the water, but it is right next to a big lake. So I feel like that's a detail I might not have really paid attention to without reading this today. But I would really, really love to see that,
Yeah.
like just a wild clefable like strolling across a lake would be so cool.
Yeah. It does genuinely feel like the Clefairy and Clefable line is like a line that they seem to like really put like a lot of detail in, and you
Yeah.
wouldn't think it.
And then they haven't followed through on it in where we see them. There was one cool episode that leaned very heavily on Clefairy and didn't do enough for
Yeah.
Clefable. Because like this is making it very cool.
Yeah.
Um, Emerald is very similar. A Clefable uses its wings to skip lightly as if it were flying. Its bouncy step lets it even walk on water. On quiet moonlit nights, it stroll on lakes. Emerald, I feel like, is doing that. Like, can I copy your homework? Yeah, but change it up a bit so you can't tell every
Yeah.
single fucking time. Fire Red sees our first bit of dick swinging.
Yeah.
It has an acute sense of hearing. It can easily hear a pin being dropped nearly 1,100 yards away, which is a fucking weird number.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It makes you think Fire Red Professor. Well, actually, that's the original one because I just scrolled up dead quick.
Yeah.
That's the original one. Red and Green Professor going. Take this pin 1,000 yards away. Can it hear it? Yeah. What about 1,100? Yeah. What about 1,105?
No.
No.
But if it can easily hear it 1,100, surely that means with like in optimal conditions it can hear it from further away.
Well, obviously, they did that research like last thing on a Friday. They were like, should we do further away? Nah. Get bevies in.
But it seemed like it didn't seem to be struggling too much. It's like
Like,
uh,
yeah, write it down.
yeah. Leaf Green has used the same as Red and Blue.
Yeah.
Diamond has rarely seen by people, is said to be drawn by the full moon to play at deserted lakes. I think that's cute.
Yeah.
But again, not really new information. Pearl has its hearing is so acute it can hear a pin drop over half a mile, which I did just Google. Half a mile, 1,100 yards is about 0.6 of a mile. So that's the same information we already have, but with like a different measurement.
They're like, we need to pad this out. We need to pad this out. Imperial, right? Get on it.
I feel like these are all variations on the same thing. It is very wary and rarely shows itself to people. Its ears can hear a pin drop over half a mile away. I think that is slightly better worded than Pearl, because Pearl says it can hear a pin drop over half a mile. Like, it should say over half a mile away. Heart Gold and Soul Silver are just gold and silver over again. Black and white are the same as platinum. Black 2 and white 2 even have given us the same information, but in slightly new phrasing. There is a sensitive enough to hear a pin drop from over a mile away. So not just half a mile, but a full mile now. So
Wow.
someone's done, it's not easily anymore, but someone's done some additional research here. So they're usually found in quiet
Yeah,
places.
black
Um,
professor, black and white professor were like, yeah, half a mile, and black two and white two were like, now I need to get my steps in.
yeah. So X is the same as pearl, and Y is the same as leaf green. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are the same as Ruby and Sapphire, which I don't mind because I like those ones. Sun and Moon have some new information for us. Sun has, they don't like to reveal themselves in front of people. They live quietly and pack deep in the mountains. So this is the first we've heard of packs. And Moon has, according to tradition, people who see a pair of clefables skipping by can look forward to a happy marriage. That's a new bit of information
Yeah,
and a new bit of lore. Like I like that bit of superstition. Um, Ultra Sun, I don't know how I feel about this wording, but it can't help but hear a pin drop from over half a mile away. So it lives deep in the mountains where there aren't many people or Pokemon. I actually quite like that. I
yeah,
thought it can't help but hear was a bit weird because it's like, what do you mean? Um, Maybe there are noisier things in that half a mile, but actually, it then leading into the explanation that that's why it's in the mountains, away from like loud things,
yeah,
makes total sense.
yeah. It
Um,
also explains why Clefable know all the gossip in the office.
yeah,
I couldn't help but hear that you were having issues in your marriage.
I couldn't
How do you
help
know about
but
that?
hear.
Yeah,
Oh.
well, how do you know about that? Well, first of all, I know for a fact that you haven't seen two Clefables skipping. Uh, and secondly, I can't help but hear a pin drop. So I was going to hear about how you and David were having issues.
Issues. I quite like Ultra Moon as well. Some scientists believe that it gazes intently at the sky on nights with a full moon because it's homesick. That's quite cute.
Oh,
And I like the believed bit as well because it leans into that like air of mystery that we really got with Clefairy. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee has the same as yellow. Uh, Sword and Shield have the same as leaf green and black two and white. No, not black two. Yeah, black two and white two. Um, Brilliant Diamond is the same as Diamond, and Shining Pearl is the same as Pearl. Legends Arceus has Legend says that on clear, quiet nights it listens for the voices of its kin living on the moon. I too often think of my homeland so far away. I really like that
yeah,
one because like again clear quiet nights I like because in this particular game the alpha clefable as I said only appears on nighttime with a full moon.
yeah,
That it listens for the voices of its kin living on the moon is like hints at that. Like it's like right, it needs to be a clear night with the moon out. Like that is a clue to like where and when you can find this Pokemon in Pokemon Legends Arceus. That is kind of a mechanic that isn't used as well in other games and I think could still be very much built upon in future, but like it's the start of something I really like to see.
yeah,
I also like how like in Legends Arceus, you wrote the Pokedex yourself,
yeah,
and like it ties into your story a bit because it's not quite got that like scientific field researcher like attempt to be objective. It's like it's also kind of your little journal, and I like that. I think that this is a really cute way of like being for this game,
yeah,
um, rather than just like it's got ears.
yeah,
Um, um, Scarlet has said to live in quiet, remote mountains. This type of fairy has a strong aversion to being seen. I think that's phrased differently from all of the. Oh no, it's the same as Crystal. Ignore me. It's the same as Crystal. And then Violet has the same as Fire Red.
yeah.
So
I tell you,
that's just stuff.
I'll tell you one thing that I have been quite pleased by. So I actually scrolled down to see the Kitakami Pokedex from Pokemon Snap 2. And
Okay.
for both this and Clefairy, they were Pokemon that came out on nighttime courses.
Yeah, that's really cute. That's
Uh,
very cute.
yeah, nice little attentions to detail there.
Yeah. Like, yeah, definitely. I feel like Pokemon Snap, you did get like more of that, like, right, what are Pokemon like in the wild rather than like what they like to battle with.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'd like to see more of that in the main series games.
Well, should we have a look at the Smogon?
Let's do it.
Okie doke. So, uh, already I'm seeing a lot of yellow, so that's a good sign for it. Um, and so HP 95, pretty decent.
Mhm.
Attack 70, defense 73, special attack 95, special defense 90, and a low speed. I'm just gonna very quickly flip over to Clefairy to compare those, but those have gone up significantly. So like the
Yeah,
attack and defense have added like 20-25 on already. Uh,
yeah,
so like big jumps across. So
big
like
big jump.
in fact, special attack from Clefairy is 35. Uh, it goes up 35 from 60 to 95. It's in the OU category, which I want to say is overused. So it's looking pretty. It's looking pretty. Um, it's looking pretty good for Clefairy, which for Clefable, which again I feel like you would not initially guess that that is the case. Um,
Yeah, yeah, because like, there we've seen a lot of Pokemon so far that have like a decent amount of green in their stats, and like Clefable has no green. I would have thought overused would at least be the Pokemon that have yellow across the board and no red.
yeah,
But like Clefable's got some red and some orange.
yeah,
Um, However, like I'm also kind of not surprised because if like given we saw how competitively viable Clefairy is,
yeah,
obviously evolution has to be able to top that. I think the fairy typing definitely helps it. Now it's no longer normal.
yeah.
And also it's got a move pool that lends itself to sort of creative strategies more than just like, blast it with HP lowering moves, which is generally how I approach Pokemon.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm going to be interested to see as well. So, what generation did you bring in Fairy type?
I want to say Palos.
Kalos. So that's X and Y.
Yes.
Because I just want to see if we go into
Generation 6. So
generation.
Generation 6.
Yeah. So
Fairy type was introduced in Generation 6, the first new type for more than 12 years. Its main intention was to balance the type chart by reducing the power of dragons, while also giving an offensive boost to poison and steel types. Several old Pokemon were retyped and new Pokemon introduced, and in the years since, the total number of Fairy type Pokemon has caught up with other types.
so what I want to have a quick look at is see if it was still an overused category when it was a normal type. So there we go.
Ah.
Look, so if we go into uh, back when it's a normal type, it's actually in the rarely used category. So
Yeah, I can see that because, like I said, like you have better, like chunkier, tankier, normal type Pokemon. Like you've got Tauros, which has like a surprisingly good move pool. You've got Snorlax, which you are just given. Ilera, a bunch of them just sitting there in the road. You've got like or Pidgeot's a normal type.
yeah,
Like Dodrio's are normal type. Like you've got a lot of cool like Chansey is obviously like if you're going for like the fat pink ones,
mm,
you'd pick Chansey, I think,
yeah.
out of the options that you have.
So
Um hmm.
So I'm going to very quickly see what it says about it in Gen 5. There we go. So there we go. I'll just read that paragraph and then flip over to what it's like now. Clefable, who was one of the most versatile Pokemon in Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, makes a comeback in rarely used. Clefable possesses respectable bulk, along with reliable healing, amazing ability with Magic Guard. It also has great support moves in its arsenal, such as Wish, Heal Bell, Stealth Rock. All these traits make it a great special wall Wish Passer, Cleric, and Hazard Setter. Magic Guard gives it immunity. Just going to skip here a little bit. To top it all off, clefable has a wide attacking move pool, allowing it to surprise many checks and counters. It can pack quite the punch, such as Magic Guard. Finally, when holding Toxic Orb, clefable can act as a great status absorber using a powerful facade. I was going to call it facade then. But let's flip back to now and see what it says about it now. Because it looks like that fairy type has really boosted this up. Clefable's decent bulk, reliable recovery, and fantastic defensive typing allow it to act as a solid check to Pokemon like Garchomp, Mega Medicham, Mega Low Punish. Also, it's doing decent against like Mega Evolutions as well, and Horlucha, making it a valuable defensive Pokemon in the tier. It also has access to 2 fantastic abilities in Magic Guard and Unaware, sprouting into different sets. Defensive Magic Guard, Clefable provides wonderful utility to bulky, offensive, and balanced teams thanks to its ability to act as a status absorber and use of moves like Stealth Rock, Calm Mind, and Thunder Wave. Again, I'm just going to skip ahead a tiny bit. These boons and the fact it can also use heal statuses with Heal Bell and Pass Wish to its teammates make Unaware Clefable a stall team mainstay. However, Clefable does have its own shortcomings. Its rather lackluster offensive presence, if not running Life Orb, means it invites a plethora of dangerous wall breakers such as Heatran, is it Magiana? Is that how that's pronounced?
I don't know.
Mega.
I thought it was Magina because it's got gears. So I thought gear was a. It might not be.
No, that makes sense. Mega Mawile, Tapu Balu, and Volcarona, although Clefable's expansive moveset means that these Pokemon can be surprised by moves like Thunder Wave and Fire Blast. Additionally, which I'm assuming will be a holdover from back when it was a normal type. Additionally, its bulk is quite mediocre for a defensive Pokemon, making it prone to losing to Pokemon it is supposed to check if it is chipped even slightly. So there we go. I am suitably, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I'm suitably, pleasantly impressed and surprised by Clefable.
Yeah. I feel like it was quite underwhelming in terms of like its role narratively. And also like you don't see a lot of them like in the games being used by other trainers to show you what you can really do with it.
Yeah.
Like Gen 2, for instance, I never would have picked a Miltank, but because Whitney's fucked me up,
Yeah.
like it made me think, fuck, I need to learn how to use a Miltank.
Yeah.
But like Clefable doesn't really get that. So
Yeah.
I feel like it's another one it's really badly underserved. And I feel like it could have been so cool if they just put a bit more of an effort into that.
Yeah. But I bet you that is because of Pikachu and Jigglypuff.
Yeah.
But
well.
But I do genuinely think that this, like all the evidence that we've done in this episode, seems to suggest that whoever runs Pokemon like high up must be a big fan of this Pokemon.
Yeah. Someone put a lot of effort into making Clefable like a really interesting to dig into because I've really enjoyed this one.
Yeah. Right. Well, should we draw it to a close?
We need to give it our rating.
Oh yes. I'm gonna give it a 6 again.
Yeah, I was gonna give it a 4 because I feel like it could be so much better, but it was so like underused that there was just so much like missed potential in it. Like all of this information that just like didn't come through in the story and it should have done. And it's like I wish it had.
Yeah.
I wish it had. I feel like if it had got that attention in a few episodes, or even as like a side character in one of the films,
yeah,
the way that Slowking was, for instance,
yeah,
if it had that, then it would have been a 6, and I would have seen all of this, and I would have loved it, and I still would have had the issue of, well, I want to see more of it in the games.
Yeah.
But like the only time Clefable is really memorable is the Alpha Clefable in Arceus, and honestly, a lot of the alphas are cool. Like a lot of them are really well executed in Legends Arceus when it comes down to like figuring out, this the space they take up on the map.
Yeah,
So for that reason, I feel like, and it's not Clefable's fault. Like I like Clefable a lot more now than I did before we
yeah,
started this episode, but uh, it was done a bit dirty, unfortunately.
yeah. You know what? I think you've made a fair argument, and I shall actually drop mine down to a five. I'm going to drop it down to a five.
Another episode where we spend, what is it, 2.5 hours talking about stuff just to go, yeah, mid.
Very true, very true, very true.